Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be hailing from. I'm Eric, the IT guy Hendricks, and this is Red Hat Enterprise Linux presents. How many hundreds of times have I said that? Anyway, this is RHEL Presents, and we've got a special mini series for you over the next 4 or 5 weeks. We're going to be talking about how to get up and running with Red Hat Satellite. And joining me for the entire mini series is my buddy Richard Rios. Welcome to RHEL Presents, my buddy.
Hello, everyone. Just glad to be here. Little light effects here. Just happy to be here. When all red, being satellite, even a satellite shirt to match the occasion. I have been working with satellite since version 5, otherwise known as Spacewalk. But
Hmm.
this is the new and improved and much mature version of satellite.
Yeah, so Richard, why don't you introduce yourself real quick? Tell folks what you do here at Red Hat, and maybe throw in something you do on the side for fun.
Well, let's see. This is my 10th year with Red Hat. Time has flown by. I am a solutions architect. I've worn multiple hats, no pun intended, behind me. Uh, been mainly in the role of solutions architect for the commercial mid-market space, regionally as well. And one of the areas that must say I had a calling for was the actual infrastructure components, virtualization, the OS, maintaining said OS, setting up standards, so those kinds of things. So it really, I fell in love with satellite, from the very beginning, because what its capabilities and how it could really impact it's just admins or infrastructures day to day going on. Just because I spend those countless hours and weekends just beating my head, trying to figure things out from what I inherited. And satellite just makes that so much easier. Having a content management engine really just changed my life in that respect.
Yeah, Red Hat Satellite is an amazing tool, and I too used it back in the Spacewalk days. When we say Spacewalk, by the way, folks, what we're talking about is that Spacewalk used to be the upstream of Red Hat Satellite, so it would be
5.
developed under 5, and um, it would be developed and worked on upstream, and then it would be productized as Red Hat Satellite. And then with Satellite 6, getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but with Satellite 6, it was rebuilt on a few other tools, and we'll talk about all of that a little bit later in the mini series. Speaking of which, if you're tuning in, you are catching the initial episode of what should be about a 4 or 5 episode run of content around Red Hat Satellite itself. This isn't going to be a typical RHEL Presents show where we've got a lot of interview, a lot of discussion, and then some demo at the end. This is going to be very, very demo heavy. And in fact, if you go check out the RHEL YouTube channel, perfect time to go to the channel and subscribe and hit that bell. That way you get notified when we do these events. Unlike RHEL Presents, this is going to be very, very focused. In fact, last year, John Spinks was in the hot seat with me, and we did a number of episodes around Red Hat Insights. So if you didn't catch that, definitely go check that out. But that's going to be the kind of the style we're going to. It's going to be more into the terminal kind of a format here. With the exception of this episode where we have a little bit lengthier introduction. But by the end of it, we hope to have multiple RHEL clients connected to a satellite system with some content views and some packages that we can deploy. So tune in every Thursday for the next few weeks around this time to get all that amazing information. And of course, because we are live on YouTube, you can hang out in our chat, and Richard and I will try our best to answer questions live on air. I may see if Nate or Scott can produce future episodes that way. I'm not doing all the things, but with that said, I think that kind of covers the preliminaries. Why don't
Yeah, I think so.
5 minutes in we share my screen and let's get into some stuff here. So a little bit of background. What we are running is this is just a vanilla RHEL 8.10 virtual machine here in my home lab. As you can see, I've got it registered. I'm using simple content access. And then to show there's nothing up my sleeve, I can't talk and type. I'm going to do a DNF update. We're going to, at least as of an hour ago, I didn't have any new packages. Hopefully DNF doesn't prove me wrong. But we're going to make sure we've got all the packages were registered. In fact, Rios mentioned a good point before the show to go in and make sure that we've got all the necessary repositories here. Rich, you were talking during pre-show about the importance of making sure that you met all the requirements. Now I've shown a few, but you wanted to hang out in particular?
Well, with the latest builds for satellite, I believe we're on version way past 6.11 now, right? You need to have a RHEL 8 system. As a matter of fact, the majority of the time you want to think, I want to patch this system within an inch of its life. So it has to be current, but you always want to verify that the version of satellite you have is going to match what you have. And also, how long is that server going to live? Is it going to live for, is this a test environment you're going to rebuild soon? Is this going to live for a year? Or is it going to be years of life? And if you're thinking years, well, how many OS versions is it going to support? Am I going to be supporting just RHEL 8 or 9? Or I'm doing 7, 8, 9. And every version in between, and every single package is available. So all of those will take up some space, just because it is a content management engine, and it's going to hold it in your VAR law, in your VAR. So always make sure you have sufficient space, or you've configured your file system to allow you to expand that easily, because you'll have the space for pulp, for example, which can take quite a bit of space on that area, right? That was I'm speaking from past experience.
Well, we won't tell the audience how, when I was prepping for this mini series, when I built out this virtual machine, I just gave it my standard 32 gig QCOW2 file and said, have at it, and then realized, wait a minute, that's not going to work out well. So yeah, Varlog recommended 10 gigs, PG SQL recommended around 20 gigs. Kind of minimal recommendations for pulp is 300 gigs. And then
think bigger.
I've got that. Yeah, probably bigger, depending on how many versions of RHEL you're going to be supporting. If there's a lot of third-party repositories like Apple that you may be pulling in, and then my 28 gigs of that 32 gig original disk. So I've actually got two virtual disks on this system.
To give you an idea, so at one point I was tasked to maintain the internal satellite server that we use for our demo environment that all solutions architects could use. I started at 300, and because everybody would use it for either self-training or demo purposes, I ended up growing that to a terabyte, just because I kept getting, can we get more space, or it was running out of space. So yes, I was thinking people are going to experiment and try things. Yeah, terabyte is where I ended up. So I'm not saying everybody needs to get a terabyte for it, but space will be consumed easily.
Well, and luckily you don't have to guess at this. There is an incredible installation guide out on our website. If you check out the description below after the show, we'll have a link there. And in fact, I think the entire first chapter is just prereqs. What version of the operating system, how you should configure certain aspects of it, and then the disk layout that we just kind of talked through.
Yeah, becoming very well acquainted with it becomes really important. Or that's not even speaking to if you ever had to rebuild a satellite. Like you had a test environment and you were rebuilding it from scratch, and there are some other things that could happen in that space. Right, Eric?
Yeah, well, I'll tell that story here in a bit. But
okay.
So the installation process is going to take some time. So why don't we dive in here to our virtual machine, and let's get some things going, and we can kind of chat as we wait for certain pieces of it to load. So we've got a lot of the preliminaries taken care of. So I want to do a DNF repo list, and this will tell me what repositories are actually enabled and configured for my RHEL 8 box here. So we've got the BIOS OS and the AppStream repositories, and then and then I goofed. So what I was going to show you was that we then need to go in and enable the 2 satellite repositories. So we're going to install satellite 6.15 and satellite maintenance 6.15 as well. And so to do that, we would do a subscription manager command, and we'd want to enable those 2 repositories. Of course, this command will complete without any errors because it's already configured. And then after that, we'll be able to do a DNF module enable. So if you're familiar with app streams and the concept of modules, it's basically an easier way to pick which packages and what versions you get installed on your system. So in this case, I'm going to do a module enable on satellite for EL8, since we're using Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8. I'm going to go ahead and enable that. You'll see me using the TAC Y flag a number of times just because I hate trying to do something and then realizing that it hasn't moved because it's asking me if I'm sure. So that's why we're using the TAC Y flag there. And so now it's enabling streams for PKI, PostgreSQL, Ruby, satellite, and satellite maintenance. Now, because patching usually found a way to bite me as when I was a systems administrator, I use the following command liberally. DNF clean all cleans out that cache of metadata and information. So I tend to run it before I do any patching, anytime I change any repository settings. Basically, when you're doing a patching operation, when in doubt, clean the cache. So I do a DNF clean all. All it means is the next time you go to do a DNF operation, it'll take a little bit longer as it's pulling down all that metadata, but it will be fresh and will tend not to run into too many issues there.
No, that is a great point. Having a clean, stable environment is really important.
All right, I will tell that story, but while I'm telling that story, I'm going to go ahead and kick off the first big operation here. We're going to do a DNF install on satellite, and because we're live on the air, I'm going to go ahead and let that run for a bit. So as you can tell, it's taking a little bit of time there to pull in all the metadata from the 4 repos that we have enabled. So while that's running, Richard had no end of jokes to make yesterday. We were preparing for this episode. I was doing some practice runs to make sure all the commands were correct, make sure that while we're live on air, I could copy and paste out of my notes because we've run into that issue on Into the Terminal where copy and paste doesn't work because your text editor or something decides that it wants to turn 2 hyphens into 1 long hyphen, which then of course the bash terminal goes, I don't know what that is.
Right.
So I was paranoid and decided to run through the process again. And I got satellite installed. I got it configured. All the services were running. The disks were laid out correctly. var log was writing as it should. SE Linux and firewall were running. I felt really good about the prep that I'd done, about my own experience installing satellite as a sysadmin. And around that time, I get a Slack message from Richard. Hey, how's it going? It's like, well, having this weird issue. I cannot get the satellite web interface to load. I don't know what it is. It's complaining about an SSL error. It's not DNS, even though it usually is DNS. It wasn't DNS. It's so 10 or 15 minutes of me beating my head against the keyboard and Richard sending me ideas about, well, what about this or what about that? And it's like, well, no, that's not it either. And I disabled the firewall, still not working. Turns out that Firefox had its best intentions and was trying to protect me from a potential SSL cert swap. It said, well, the signature on the SSL cert that I have versus the one in my cache doesn't match up. So I went in and I told Firefox, forget that old SSL cert. So because I was using the same host name, the satellite console wouldn't load because Firefox was like, no. That's a different cert. It doesn't work.
It's thinking man in the middle attacking your house.
Right. What I wanted to tell Firefox was, no, that wasn't the case. This is just like the 6th time that I've rebuilt the satellite server to make sure that everything's working.
Just you did those are not the certs you're looking for.
Yeah. So we are carrying out an operation that's going to install 418 packages, and we're at 72. So I've got some questions that I can share. And the first one is, what is satellite? We've kind of hinted at this. We've kind of talked about its history at a high level, but what is satellite and what problem does it try to solve?
Oh, you mean me? Oh, sure.
I'm not going to do all the talking.
Well, I mean, I usually like to refer to Satellite 6 as a very robust content engine. You know, you are basically getting all the content you want to present to your hosts, and you want to control that very specifically. Like in Linux, you cannot install what you can't get. So if you want to have a very well-defined environment of applications or a specific stack, you're able to create and curate that build process of which hosts or set of hosts or organizations, what packages they can install, update. You could even then start creating a lifecycle management. In the past, you had to do that via methodology, whereas with Satellite 6X, it is actually baked into the systems. You can actually have your prod, your test, your dev environment, and have those different versions of the code, as in there is a known issue or bug came out, you're not going to introduce it to production until it's gone through its proper testing. So you can actually go through those different life cycles, but it actually has a mechanism to maintain those life cycles. And even if you wanted to have what you've decommissioned, you can have that there. Let's say you have an audit 18 months from now, and the auditor wants to know what happened 18 months from now. You are actually able to show that. So it's, yes, most people think just patching. Yes, it does patching. It does it well. But the content management engine does a fantastic job in that respect. It's a security tool as well. It is a way to give, it's like a force multiply, be able to treat either one host the same way you would treat 1,000 hosts. You don't have to go touch 1,000 hosts to do a YUM update or do a specific security fix. You're able to do them in groups or in fleets in a way that it makes a lot of sense.
Well, and what we'll see next week in particular, or in our next episode, is that you can create content views, which allow you to define basically the packaged lifecycle of your systems. So you can set up, if you've got like 4 environments, you can set up dev, QA, stage, production, and you can basically graduate a package or a group of packages through the different environments, so that when it comes to patching time, you can take your systems out of the load balancer, you can run your patches, and it'll only get those packages that you have okayed to then restart those services. Hopefully you're doing some sanity checks and then putting those systems back in your load balancer. So it really helps manage that packaged life cycle. A lot of systems don't run on the bleeding edge. They don't get all the latest and greatest packages the day that they come out. If you do, more power to you. Next time we're at a conference, I'll buy you a drink, because I wish that I'd worked in an environment where I could just run DNF update and go on with my workday. But patching always was a big ordeal. And one of the other things I can think of using satellite for was, I've been in environments that have thousands of servers, and you don't want 1,000 systems going out through your internet pipe to pull down, like this operation was 400 some odd packages. That's a lot of bandwidth, and that takes a lot of time. And especially if you've got a very tight maintenance window, I don't want to wait for those 400 packages to download 1,000 times. So you downloaded it down into your data center once to Red Hat Satellite, and then you've got those same 1,000 systems pulling 400 packages from a single server there locally in your data center. And we'll talk about some of the other concepts like capsules and multi-site and that kind of thing in a future episode. But just the ability, Well, and one of the other environments I worked with was a government organization, and they were very, very strict on public access. And it took everything our team had just to get approval for limited number of ports opened up on
Yeah.
the satellite server to talk to the Red Hat CDN, and that was the
Mhm.
only internet access any of our servers had to the outside world was through that satellite server. And you see that even more today um,
Mhm.
with Red Hat Insights. Red Hat Insights and Satellite talk to each other quite a bit, so you can actually use Satellite to talk to Insights and use Satellite. You can initiate operations on Satellite from Insights, like if you're trying to do some sort of remediation for Insights vulnerabilities, something along those lines. You can be logged into Red Hat Insights and trigger actions on your satellite server to be executed against some of your clients.
But there's also those environments we don't talk too much about. What if you're somewhere without the internet, but you still need to update your systems? Satellite does that quite well because you could actually literally have your internet phasing satellite that's going to download your content, and then you're going to put that in a portable media, you might say, that you then have ingest or ingress into your offline or air gap satellite environment once you've validated and checked and make sure everything is uh, kosher. Yes, you're able to incorporate it and then deploy it as needed. It is seen in government environments, highly secure environments. I've seen it in cruise ships.
Oh yeah, satellite would be an awesome use case for a cruise ship. Maybe a cruise ship will sponsor the show, and you and I will get to go for a cruise and do the episode from
Oh,
there.
there you go. There you go. Anything's possible.
All right, so our satellite package has installed. So let me find my place in our notes again. Speaking of insights, I honestly didn't check this beforehand, but I want to switch the camera view here. I'm flying solo. I got spoiled by having Nate on RHEL Presents the other day as a
Mm.
producer. So if you haven't already, please go out to all your systems, install Insights. It is amazing. And if you're not sure how amazing it is, go check the Modernizing RHEL Management mini series that John Spinks and myself did last year. Still very, very applicable, really awesome. Luckily, my RHEL 8 template that I've been using uh, already has it installed. And since my system is registered, I'm going to go ahead and skip the registration process. But that you'd run sudo insights client register, or if you're using the RHC command, you can actually register your system with Red Hat Access and Insights at the same time. So I'm just going to
Nice.
go ahead and have my system check in real quick, which is basically Insights is going to pull all of the data that it usually pulls and upload that to Red Hat Insights
Yeah.
at the hybrid cloud console.
So, Eric, I'm just noticing Carlos posted a question regarding deploying in a disconnected environment. Uh, the requirements are the same as they are for satellite, but you would basically send up two satellites. One that would be connected to the internet, which is going to basically pull in all the content that you need, and then you would export that content to a media that you would scan, verify that it meets all your criteria, and then it can be imported into the air gap, the offline satellite environment that then can be pushed to all your hosts. And all those hosts that you have would register to that satellite server. So they don't need to go to the CDN to register. You don't have to individually go in and manually register each one. And no, the whole idea is to make satellite sort of like your single source of truth for your environment, and the
Great
content and
explanation for it.
registration. Yeah.
All right, so I
All right.
mentioned that I was actually able to run the installation with firewall enabled. So I'm going to go ahead and configure my firewall here. I'm not using satellite to do anything crazy in my home network here. I don't want to break Plex because then my wife and kids will be on me. So we're just going to open up HTTPS for now. Maybe we'll get a little crazier for the next episode, but for now, I don't want to get in trouble. Yes,
No
I
worries.
am the systems administrator in my own home. So now comes the big bit here. So let's break down this gnarly command here. So we're going to do a sudo satellite installer. We're going to choose satellite as our scenario. The other scenario that I can think of is capsules, and we'll talk about those in a future episode. But we're basically just telling the installer that, yes, we want to install satellite. We're going to call the initial organization Acme Org, because why not? And then the hat tip to Matthew Yee, who's my counterpart on Red Hat Satellite. He's based out of Vancouver. And then we'll give it the admin username of admin and the initial password of Red Hat 1, because why not be super secure in our home lab? We're going to kick that off. Now, this is going to take some time. In fact, it even tells you this will take some time.
Find your favorite beverage and sit down.
Pretty much, yeah. So it's going to go through and it's checking to make sure that everything's configured correctly, and then it's going to start the install process. And we'll revisit it a time or two here as it moves forward. But while it's kind of doing its own inventory, Rich, why don't you tell me a little bit about availability? So we're running RHEL 8.10. Mm-hmm. So there's considerations to make on the client side, but let's start with the server side.
Well, on the server side, you want to have a RHEL 8 server. I mean, right now, we started with a RHEL 8.10. Perfect place to start. That is the latest build, I believe, that's available. So that is a great place to start. Now, you always want to read your release notes, because there might be some instances where they might have locked, saying, well, for this particular release, they might only want a certain version of RHEL, as in a few versions back, they might have wanted version 8.8 until some patches were available. So you always want to verify you're at the right. But in general, yes, you want the latest version. And as I said before, I tend to patch it within an inch of its life, so nothing is missing. But don't install packages you don't need.
Yeah, for sure. And to that point, if you're just getting started with Red Hat Satellite, now is a great time to do it, because RHEL 8 is the preferred and RHEL 8.10 is the latest, but it's also the last minor release of RHEL 8, which means that for the next 4.5 years, basically, RHEL 8.10 will be the latest in RHEL 8 and will be supported for 5 years. So if you want a nice stable base to build a permanent satellite server off of, a production satellite server, RHEL 8.10 is the way to go. There's not much reason I can think of, if you're starting from scratch, to use a different minor release of RHEL 8.
Everything, all the newer versions are usually, if you encounter an issue with the support issue, the answer is going to be, you need to update to the latest version.
Right. It is worth noting that RHEL 9 is on 9.4, but Satellite isn't ready for RHEL 9 just yet. There are some changes in the underlying operating system, and so Satellite is still being adapted for RHEL 9. So that's just something to keep in mind. However, that doesn't apply on the client side. Client side supports not only RHEL 9 clients, so basically the systems that we want to administrate with Satellite. So RHEL 9 all the way up through 9.4, which is the latest. RHEL 8, all the US releases, RHEL 8.10, and in fact, it even goes earlier. I forget exactly how far back Satellite 6. What are we installing? 6.15 will manage. But if you've got RHEL 7 systems that are now on ELS, or should be, PSA here, folks, RHEL 7 is now out of maintenance. So if you are running RHEL 7, talk to your account team about ELS support, because that'll be very important for the next few years moving forward. But Satellite does support ELS. It does have the understanding of EUS releases. So that's not holding you back from deploying Red Hat Satellite clients.
Yeah, so if you do it from basically 7 all the way to the latest version of 9, you're covered. As a matter of fact, when the initial release of Satellite 6.0, it ran on RHEL 7.
Yep.
So it has migrated as technologies have evolved. So in the future, could we see it running on RHEL 9? Absolutely. I would not be shocked. Just not within the next 12 months,
So
if not longer.
yeah, I'm not. I don't have any details on when yet, but I know
Yeah.
that's coming. One of the things that has been the focus of the last 3 or 4 satellite releases has been stability and usability. There's been a ton of overhauls to the UI, especially
Mm.
UI based workflows. The menus are so much smoother and they're so much easier to understand. There's been a lot of underlying work. To some of the databases that are included with satellite. So a lot of maintenance work being done to satellite. It can be a bit of a resource hog, but the last 4 or 5 releases have really focused on kind of easing that resource burden.
Oh, absolutely. When it was first released, I believe we had 3 or maybe 4 databases that it maintained, and,
That
and
sounds
over
about
the
right.
years, we've collapsed it to something much more manageable. I mean, it is truly performant when I compare it to what was first released. Uh, what I like to remind people is, so Satellite 5, based on spacewalk, was one project, spaghetti of project of code. This is, think of it as multiple unique projects that have been amalgamated to create satellite, because the technology underneath it are very robust on their own, standing on their own, but together now they have been fully integrated, tested, verified, and certified and maintainable. So all the things that it's able to do are pretty amazing, and usually when people start digging underneath the hood and seeing what really makes satellite sing, they're quite impressed of what has been done. The engineering has been taken place here. All
Yeah,
right, where are
Spacewalk
we
being a
now?
standalone project was pretty great, but yeah,
Oh yeah.
Satellite 6 and beyond is quite an impressive feat of engineering, and especially once we get to the console and you can see all the different menus, all the different operations and types of operations that we can get into. It really is amazing that all those pieces work together in such an effective way.
Hmm.
So we're still configuring here,
We're
and
halfway.
that's the that's the
Ballpark.
that's the risk you run doing this live. Um,
Yeah.
but so we did have one other discussion item that we'll cover, and we've hinted at it a few times, and we've answered a couple of questions in chat
Mhm.
about it. But so we've talked about connected versus disconnected, but what if it's distributed? What if we have a data
Mhm.
center? What if we've got not multiple data center locations, and then maybe we're out in the cloud as well? But I don't want to have to stand up multiple satellite servers. There's got to be a way to make that easier, right, Rich?
Oh, sir, one satellite to rule them all. Uh, you can have, actually, the way you can configure it, for example, is to have a satellite server, and then downstream from it have capsules. So capsules are basically registered to the satellite server, and they'll get all their content and commands and things to do from it. So you could have, for example, let's say you just had one massive data center that you had thousands of servers. You might want to have maybe one satellite server and a few capsules to distribute the load in different environments to log into it and register to it. Call capsule 1, 2, 3, and 4. Or you want to keep your control and content as close to the hosts. And if you have multiple data centers, you can have a capsule, let's say, at each data center. Which, by the way, once you have your subscription for satellite, you know, we figured we should give you enough to stand up. So by default, we had to pick a number. Somebody threw a dart to a board, and we picked 50.
That's about
So,
what it feels
but
like.
right. On day one, it's like, well, how many should we get? Well, you get 50 satellite servers. That means you can set up one satellite server and 49 capsules. Or let's say you wanted to have, hey, I want to have a satellite server just for dev, completely separate from. You could do that. you could also use the lifecycle environment and separate them, or via organizations and separate them. But yes, you can actually have separate satellite servers and act independently, or have one that, for example, can do your data centers. And let's say you have some cloud instances, and you could put a capsule on said instance, and then control your cloud instances, whether it be AWS or Azure or IBM's, or I think we even have, I think I left one out. Google, Azure, AWS. I'm sure I left one out. Anyway, but you're able to do that across the board if you're in the same way, or you can set up a satellite server on a cloud provider if that's what you wanted to do. Now, mind you, it's using resources, and especially when you have environments that you want to have your on-prem look exactly like your cloud or vice versa. That would be an instance that might be attractive. Or there is an option you can actually clone a satellite server, like the configuration and all the lifecycle environment configuration and the all-powerful content views. You can create those and then clone it and make a copy to attach to another satellite server you have. That's another option. Or for those, I don't know, disconnected environments, that's another time where it might become attractive. Or for DR purposes, I mean, the use cases are plentiful, but what you can utilize those tools for. But yes, you have we got you covered. And if you're not sure, give us a call.
Yeah, in fact, as a solutions architect, that's a big piece of what you do on a daily basis is connect with customers and help match problems to our solutions.
Yeah. I love to solve a problem. That's what really drives it. To help and solve a problem, that's really what gets me going. So I love to hear what people are trying to accomplish and see how we can come up with something simple to make their lives easier. And definitely, especially when I hear we have a few hundred servers and we're doing it manually. Is there a way we can simplify that? Yes. There's multiple ways we can help. Let's see. Carlos just checked.
So yes, thank you to Rick Green, who's a Red Hatter, I believe. Rick, I think you're still a TAM, right?
Yes.
But a little bit earlier in the episode, and I was actually on the side trying to verify. But Carlos is trying to use his developer subscription for individuals, his D4I subscription to install and deploy satellite. And it looks like Rick did me a favor and checked, and it doesn't look like satellite is included in the D4I.
It would show up as a satellite infrastructure subscription.
But Rick did provide us with a command. So if you've got RHEL, you can run that command and see what you do have access to. That developer subscription for individuals gives you up to 16 no-cost RHEL systems. I actually use my D4I subscription here in my home lab. I guess I'm using my employee subscription for this system, but you can run a number of RHEL systems in your home lab. There's talk about a satellite self-paced lab. We're still working on it, so it's not publicly available yet. But that's but what you can do is excuse me. What you can do is spin up satellite in a cloud environment. Hyperscalers like Red Hat, hyperscalers like AWS have RHEL marketplace offerings, and you can spin up a satellite server on one of those marketplace offerings, especially if you want to kind of follow along with this, and you only get charged for your data storage and your runtime. So if you spin up a RHEL 8 box in AWS and give it the resources that you need, spin it up, use it while we're live on the air, and then shut it down after the show, it may not cost you all that much to be able to follow along and play at home. Or wait, but that still doesn't get you satellite content. Oof.
Still got to pull it.
I'm going to have to talk to the business unit. I'm going to have to talk to the BU about getting satellite support for D4I.
So here's something interesting. You kind of mentioned, alluded to, the specs for that you would want for a satellite server. Uh, over the years, it has changed, but I have found that it's always good to start with at least 4 cores for the CPU. More is better, but at least 4. And I remember with Satellite 6, it started saying 16, and they creeped up. Realistically, your jumping off point should really be 32 gigabytes of RAM to start. If you have more, if you spare more, yes, especially if it's going to be under a lot of load, because that is their go-to. Yeah, what you can see is the beta, which is not what you, well, I mean, you can certainly play with the beta version.
So tell you what, Carlos, put that question in the comments below, and I'll do some checking and I'll get an official answer on that. I didn't think it was included, but hey, I mean, if you can get access to the beta, at least that's something, especially for home lab use.
Yeah.
Let's check on our server here. We're slowly but surely we're up to 1500
almost there
out of 1645. I think I've got one more topic we can use to stall just long enough for it to finish. So let's see. So as you can tell, sometimes live streams are easy, sometimes not so much. Doing an installation episode, I had intended to have a second system up and running, but that had the installation complete. I like my cooking style shows where I can start work on something and then switch over to a different system in case we run long.
Oh yeah.
But just for interest's sake here, this virtual machine has 372 gigs of storage, 20 gigs of RAM, and 6 CPU cores.
So if I wanted to turn my satellite server into a hot rod, what I used to do, and I still do in my home lab, the pulp directory file system is on a 1 terabyte NVMe.
That's the way to do it.
And so is the database with 32 gigs of RAM and 4 to 8 cores, depending on how I was feeling that day, because I did not want to wait on disk IOs. But
sure.
you don't always have that choice.
So as we are waiting on the last few steps of the installation process to complete here, it usually finishes up fairly quickly at this point. First off, thank you all for joining us, whether you're watching live or watching deferred. Really appreciate your time. There's so many things that you could be doing. So hanging out with a couple of nerds talking about satellites and making fun of each other live on air. Definitely appreciate you hanging out and joining us live. If you like the banter and if you like the live content, the chance to learn right from your own desk, you can join us. What is today? Thursday. If you're watching this live, you can join us tomorrow around noon Eastern. Nate and Scott will be live on Into the Terminal. We'll be talking about troubleshooting Linux services. So nice. System CTL all day long. What happens when you go to start a service and it immediately throws up all over you and says no? And then a good friend, mentor, and the person I blame for the path my career's on right now, Noah Chalai, will be joining Nate and myself next Wednesday. He's the host of the Ask Noah Show. He'll be joining us on Red Hat Enterprise Linux Presents next Wednesday to talk about what it's like to be a Linux user in community. I'll tell a little bit about my story and how I went from being a Linux systems administrator to sales to marketing. And we'll get Noah's experience as well. It's his fault that I got into podcasting and eventually moved into marketing. So excited to have my buddy Noah on RHEL Presents to talk about the community aspect of Red Hat and RHEL, or Red Hat and Linux, not RHEL specifically. Yeah. But and then so quick overview of our schedule here. Right now we're looking at about 5 episodes. today we're installing, and before we sign off, I'm hoping that I have a web console I can log into and show you that, hey, it works. Next week, episode 2, we'll be adding hosts. We'll talk about registration, discovery, and how to automate your registration process. And we'll also be adding packages. We'll talk about what SCA is, Simple Content Access. We'll subscribe some repositories, and we'll build a very basic content view. So by the end of next week, you should have servers, and you should have packages with content views. So we'll have you up and running next week. Episode 3, we're looking at CVEs and security mitigation. Rich, I cannot tell you how many times I look at like mainstream news, like not tech news, not nerd news, but like mainstream, and see yet another vulnerability live. So episode 3 here in 2 weeks, we'll be talking about CVEs and security mitigation. We'll talk about content filters, OpenSCAP, and the all-important question of which servers are impacted and how do I fix them. And then we'll be talking about management at scale for episode 4. We'll be looking at content hosts, some groups, orgs. We'll talk about a few other things like Cloud Connector and Red Hat Insights. And we'll give a hat tip to Ansible Automation Platform, which is not a replacement for Satellite. But you put the two of them together and couple that all together with Red Hat Insights, and it's beautiful. And then episode 5, we'll talk about standardization and automation, talking about using Satellite for scheduling jobs, running tasks, and some cool stuff like system roles and how you can use Satellite to administer all of that across your enterprise. Forgive me, I've recorded 4 webinars, done a live stream, and attended a number of meetings today, so my voice is shot.
I was going to say, I wish I had a lozenge to give right now. Sorry.
And through all of this, we'll have plenty of hands-on, and we'll share some day in the life stories. Hopefully, I can get back at Richard for making me tell that Firefox cert story. But we have stalled long enough because the install has been complete, and in fact, it gives us some commands we can run if we want to go ahead and set up some capsules. But we're not going to do that today. So instead,
well, if you can go back to that screen you were just showing us. Sorry, I meant to stop you before you left. So the one thing to bear in mind at the very last thing it posts there, package versions are being locked. Very important to keep that in mind. I've seen individuals who will say, well, I'm trying to upgrade. It's not letting me, because Satellite was going to package lock the Satellite server. Make sure you don't install a newer package that has not been verified and validated that it will not break Satellite. So it takes care of itself. Very important.
Yep, it uses its own satellite to manage itself. It's actually kind of crazy if you think about it. But let me find my.
I could spend 5 minutes talking about that, but I know we're over time, so.
We are a bit over time, and I was a bit afraid of that. But hey, we're doing a clean install today, so why not? All right, so I checked. This should work when I click the button.
Yeah. There we go. No man in the middle attack. All right.
Yeah, no man in the middle. Actually, this is Chrome, so
same thing.
Anyway. Yeah. All right, so I put in admin as the initial username. I put in our super secret password, and if I type my password correctly, what do you know? Live on the air in 49 minutes, we have a Red Hat Satellite server up and running.
It's a beautiful thing.
Of course, we have no hosts, no content, no packages, no nothing, but we have a working Satellite server.
Yes. So I'll tell a story. So everybody who ever installs Satellite, there's a catch-22 to Satellite. What should you never, ever, 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 ever do?
Publish your password to GitHub?
Okay, 2 things. The second should be never register your Satellite server to itself. Because if you happen to break your Satellite for some reason, and then you need to update your Satellite, It can't, because you broke it and it can't get any updates from outside of itself. So never register a satellite server to itself.
It's a really good point, and I can't say that I've ever done that before.
Yeah, never do that. If you want to know more, ask me why I know this.
I think you have to tell that story next week.
Yes, yes.
All right, folks. Well, we are 50 minutes into a 30-minute episode, but by golly, we got Red Hat Satellite installed and up and running. We are ready for next week. So I hope you follow along with us at home. Make sure to join the conversation. Put your questions and comments in the comment section below. Make sure to hit that like button. Tell a friend about this series. Richard and I have been planning it for about 3 months now. So we're really excited that we're finally live and moving forward. And if you run into issues, or if you just want to hang out around some fellow nerds, click the QR or scan the QR code thingy that way.
Yep.
That'll take you to the RHEL Discord channel. You can get live chats from all of our episodes, as well as be connected to over 100 other technologists that are excited about our live streams and our products. Occasionally, there's some conversation in there. We're still trying to get folks engaged and to not just hit mute server. But Rich and I are both in there, so feel free to join our Discord and join in on the conversation. Help start a conversation, for crying out loud. So join us for Into the Terminal tomorrow, RHEL Presents, and Up and Running with Satellite next week. So Rich, thank you for joining me. I'm really excited about this mini-series and excited to get into Satellite itself next week.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. You know I love this stuff, so this is great. Thank you for the opportunity. This is always fun.
Rich is one of the very, very few people that I know that can talk more than I do.
Yeah, I just wish I got paid by the word.
Oh, we don't? Oh, well, this episode could have been half the length.
I am paid by the quality of the words that I use.
There you go.
The actual content, not the volume.
There you go. All right, folks. On behalf of my co-host Richard Rios and the entire Red Hat Enterprise team, or Red Hat Enterprise Linux team, I've been your host, Eric the IT Guy Hendricks. This is Up and Running with Red Hat Satellite, Episode 1, Introduction and Installation. And until then, we will see you next time. Thanks for joining us.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.